This is going to sound strange, but I am begging you to give Metal Slug Tactics a second chance. Because the game was day one on Game Pass, I saw a ton of reviews where people downloaded the game, gave it a try, they died like 4 or 5 times in the first half hour, and then they said, this game is too hard, gave it a bad review, and then quit the game. And this is not too hard, and it is a great game, but it does take a little getting used to. The game does ask you to play in a completely strange way at first, and it feels so different than every other game in this genre that I can understand why you'd feel like it's too hard and you're just not understanding it. It took a while for it to click for me too. So please give this game another chance. Let's talk about it. If you're on the fence about it, it's what, $25? And I think it's one of the better games that I've played this year. Granted, I haven't fully beaten the game. I've just been enjoying it on Game Pass, but I see myself playing this for at least 20, 30, 50 hours. So for $25, not bad. So when you look at this game, it's easy to draw comparisons, right? You see this, say, okay, this looks like Triangle Strategy, or Final Fantasy Tactics, or Into the Breach, or XCOM, or any of the many, many, many tactics games that exist out there. But I will say, I'm pretty sure that this is the only tactics game like this. And I say that because in most of those tactic games, the whole point of the tactics is to be tactical in that you're, okay, I need to manage my health, I need to make sure that I'm finding accurate cover, that I'm separating enemies, that I'm managing my resources very carefully, and if I do all of that, then I will win the battle if I'm very careful about my positioning and moving enemies in the right place and predicting what they're going to do, and Metal Slug throws all that on its head. There are, of course, resources to use. There's some ammo in the game that you have to be careful about, and then there's just special abilities, but the game wants you to use those, and they want you to use it basically every turn. There's a lot of ways to refresh your adrenaline, which gives you special abilities. There's lots of ways to refresh your ammo so you never run out. They want you using those special abilities almost every single turn. They want you to use it and abuse it because those abilities break the rules, and the rules in this game are a suggestion rather than a rule. And the biggest change up, the one that I think trips up most people and why you die the first few times you play this really, really badly, and you're like, what's going on? Why is this game so hard? Why am I getting taken out in a matter of seconds? I don't get it, is the game doesn't want you to hide behind cover. The game doesn't want you to run to a higher elevation and let the enemies slowly come to you and pick them off one by one. It doesn't want you to go find vantage points and snipe enemies. It literally wants you to run up in their face and blow them away. The farther you move every turn, the more adrenaline you build, which gives you access to your special abilities, and the more dodge you get, which means when someone shoots at you, you're able to dodge those attacks and not get hurt. Not to mention that if you get to the end of whatever scenario you're on, as long as you beat the scenario and win it, all your characters on the default difficulty come back with full life. It doesn't matter if you use up all your health on 2 of your teammates and get KO'd by 2 people. It doesn't matter if you end with 1 HP on each person. All that matters is that you get to the end of the mission as quickly as possible and efficiently as possible. And this is such a cool idea because if you look at the old Metal Slug games, they were about moving as fast as possible, shooting as many bullets as possible. So turning it into a tactics game where you're like, okay, now I'm going to hide and I'm going to snipe, it wouldn't fit the world and like the themes of Metal Slug very well. So them incorporating a way to run and gun and be constantly firing, to be moving around, really feels like those old arcade games, but in a different genre, and I think that's really cool. Now there is one caveat I'll throw onto this, and I don't think a lot of people realized it at first, and that is this game does have roguelite elements. It does expect you to lose, it does expect you to lose many times, and then you use money to purchase upgrades and changes so that your next time through is a little bit easier, or you have access to a little bit stronger stuff to make it an easier time. Do you need full upgrades to win? I don't believe so. I've gotten pretty close to beating the boss with just some base stuff, so it just makes it a little bit easier if you want to, but those elements do exist, and I know that not everyone is a huge fan of roguelites, so I figured I would mention that just in case that is a major turnoff for you. But I feel like there's a lot of people who didn't even get to give this game a chance. Like I said, they downloaded it because it was free, they lost a few matches and said this is way too hard, and they stepped away, and once you really get into it, that difficulty melts away, and what you're left with is a super fast-paced tactical game, which seems like an oxymoron, but they make it work. They make it feel fast and frantic, but you still have as much time as you need. You have lots of different things to undo your movements or reset your turns if you make a major mistake or if you see a different way to play it. So you have a lot of ways to be tactical, but it still feels frantic and fun. And again, that's very Metal Slug. They kept the soul of the game when changing genres, and that is an amazingly difficult thing to do. Speaking of keeping the soul of the game, there's another couple things that they incorporate that's just absolutely awesome that I want to touch on, which is one, the different biomes. If you're a fan of Metal Slug, you will know that there is 1,000 different Metal Slug games that have gone across all sorts of different things. You go to Egypt and fight mummies, you go to the desert and you fight warriors, you go to all sorts of different locales and fight all sorts of different things that curse you with magic or technology or fight soldiers in the jungle. There's a ton of different biomes and they incorporate all of that well. The gameplay you say here is from the jungle, but I also did the desert where you're fighting the mummies, which is really cool, and it shakes up how you're approaching the enemies because they all interact with you differently. And I really appreciate that the way it works is when you go in, you choose where you want to go first, second, third, and then take on the ending boss, and when you want to take on the ending boss. So if you're running with a team that is, weak against the jungle per se, you don't have to go there first. You can go other places to level up a little bit, get those gears and those boosts so you can do better there. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to take on the hardest challenge first without all these extra bonuses because then everything else will be easy sailing and I'll know I'll win. That way, if I'm not going to win, I don't waste all this time investing into a run that's going to die. It gives you a lot of choice there, and I really appreciate that. But the other two things they incorporate super well is the Metal Slug itself. It's Metal Slug. You got to have the Metal Slugs and the bosses. What you see here is one of the boss fights, and the boss fights are these multi-phase, super huge fights that span across different zones, and they have all sorts of wiping moves that can take out your entire team in one shot. They're hard, but they're fair. And again, when we're looking at that Metal Slug arcade, to me, the bosses was what Metal Slug was all about, right? You run through the jungle and you're just jamming the fire button and killing all the soldiers in one hit because they're weak little fodder. They're not the challenge. The challenge was getting to that ending boss who had these huge moves that was going to suck through your quarters if you never fought them before. And they reincorporated that feeling where these bosses are huge and massive and take a bunch of hits, but you can then figure out how to dodge their abilities and throw grenades and other things in between their attacks to slowly whittle them down. My favorite roguelite is, of course, Slay the Spire. That is the gold standard. It is amazing. I recently got Volterro on mobile, and that game is slowly working its way up to the top, but I honestly think this one is going to take the cake for a while. It might move to a new #1 spot. It has all the makings of a good game. It has some randomness, but you can control that randomness. It has great music, it has great visuals, it has a great story, it has great lore, it just has a great feeling, and it looks great. And I know graphics aren't everything in a game, but the stylized choice it looks like Metal Slug, it feels like Metal Slug, but it looks sharp. In fact, I'd be hard-pressed to say anything bad about this game. It's just solid all the way through. The only negative thing I saw people say about the game was the difficulty. And again, that difficulty kind of lies to you. The game isn't actually terribly hard once you get past this whole, well, I don't need to be tactical, I don't need to be trying to hide or use elevation, I need to be running and gunning and running right into the face of the enemy, I need to be taking damage because all that matters is finishing the mission, my HP at the end does not matter. And that's a hard way to shift your view. Most games don't play this way, so I understand why people are struggling with the concept. In fact, I had to go to the Steam review page to try and find anything else negative to say about the game because I just had nothing else bad to say about it, but I wanted to be honest about any problems that it did have. So after reviewing the Steam negative page, quite a few people said that they ran into some sort of bugs. I haven't experienced a single bug, a single crash, but some people did say that things like they had disappearing health bars, or their characters were invisible. A couple people claimed that they lost their entire save data after playing for quite a few hours. So there are some people reporting bugs. I personally haven't experienced any of those, but again, it is something to be aware of if you're on the fence about buying the game, that there are some people who say, hey, it needs another few months of QA, let other people go through it, get a few patches before you try it out. So do be aware of that. The last thing I want to touch on that I haven't touched on at all that's a big part of the game is synchronizations, which is if your characters are fighting the same guy, your other character who is not currently active will engage in that person, allowing you to do much more damage, which opens up all these sort of ways to do different tactical things to take enemies out. Here you saw I jumped up on this guy, and then the sync attack happened, and the other person went in and shot and finished him off, which then allowed my character to have another movement and move out of danger. It's really cool to have these like synced up attacks and do these sort of things. It feels really nice and just, oh, it feels so perfect when you get it all going all at once and it just all clicks together. And this is really where like the tactics of the game comes in. Some people are saying, oh, it's not really a tactical game if you're not hiding behind cover, if you're not trying to retreat. But here's the tactic. The whole tactic is getting your team together to gang up on the boss, finding a way to move people together to sync up their attacks to do enough damage to eliminate the threats. This is like the main focus of where the tactics are. And when you get it all working together, it's just smooth like butter. So if you have Game Pass, go download it. If you have Game Pass, have already downloaded it and said this is too hard and quit, give it another try. It is such a good game. If you're on the fence about it, $25 for a great game, wonderful, but like I said, there are some reviews about maybe some QA issues and some bugs. So if you're truly on the fence and don't want to spend the $25 now, it'll still be a great game, inevitably in 6 months when it's on sale or a part of like Black Friday or Christmas sales or anything like that. So definitely worth it at full price, even more worth it if you can get it on a discount. Thank you for listening and have a blessed day.